I stood in the corner of our living room, watching as my family assembled for the annual holiday photos. My stepmom Susan adjusted everyone's positions with military precision. My father in the center, her two children on either side, perfectly coordinated in their red and green outfits. I wasn't wearing red or green. I hadn't known about the color scheme because no one had bothered to tell me. A little closer together, the photographer instructed, lifting his camera. Wait, he looked at me, then back at the group. Should we get the whole family in? Susan's perfectly maintained smile didn't waver. Oh no, Madeline doesn't need to be in these. They're for the Christmas cards, you see. Family only. Family only. The words hit like a physical blow, though I should have been used to it by now. At 28, I'd spent 15 years being the outsider in my own home, ever since Susan married my father when I was 13. Dad? I said softly, hoping that just once he might stand up for me. He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. Susan's right. These are for the formal cards. Maybe we can take some casual shots later. Later never came. It never did. I watched as they posed and smiled. Susan's children, Ethan and Lisa, beaming like the perfect siblings they were supposed to be. The photographer clicked away, capturing the image of the perfect family, minus one inconvenient daughter. Don't sulk, Madeline, Susan said afterward, checking the preview images on the photographer's camera. It's not attractive. Besides, you barely visit anymore. It wouldn't make sense to include you. I barely visited because every time I did, I was treated like an unwelcome guest in my own childhood home. The home where my mother's photos had been quietly removed, where my teenage achievements had been relegated to boxes in the attic, where even my old bedroom had been converted into Susan's home office. I visit when I can, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Work keeps me busy. Susan scoffed. Yes, your mysterious job. Still pushing papers at that investment firm. If only she knew that I didn't just work at Wilson Capital Partners. I owned it. The company I'd built from scratch had become one of the most successful private equity firms in the city, though I kept my ownership carefully hidden behind layers of corporate structure. Something like that, I murmured, watching as Ethan and Lisa sprawled on a couch, still in their coordinated outfits. Mom, Lisa called out, don't forget we need to take special photos for the country club newsletter. They're doing a feature on prominent member families. Of course, darling. Susan beamed. Madeline, would you mind giving us some privacy? I felt my face flush. Privacy? In my father's house? Our house, Susan corrected sharply. And yes, privacy. These photos are for club members only. You understand. I did understand. I understood perfectly. I also understood something they didn't, that their precious country club had been quietly acquired by one of my subsidiary companies last month, just like their house. My father finally looked up from his phone. Madeline, don't make this difficult. You know how these things work. Did I ever? I knew exactly how things worked in this family. I also knew that the certified letter from the bank would be arriving any minute now, informing them that their mortgage had been purchased by another of my companies. You're right, I said, picking up my bag. I do know how things work. Better than you might think. What's that supposed to mean? Susan's eyes narrowed. Just then, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Special delivery for Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, a voice called out. Susan waved her hand dismissively at me. Madeline, make yourself useful and get that, would you? We need to finish these photos. I walked to the door, accepting the certified letter from the courier. I knew exactly what it contained. Notification that their mortgage had been acquired by Phoenix Financial Holdings, one of my shell companies, the same company that had recently acquired their country club, their car loans, and even a small business loan for Susan's boutique. It's from the bank, I said, returning to the living room. Susan snatched the envelope from my hands, probably just routine paperwork, but I could see the slight tremor in her fingers as she opened it. Her face went pale as she read. James, she called to my father, her voice shaking. You need to see this. I watched as my father read the letter, his confident expression crumbling. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. They can't just sell our mortgage without notice. Actually, they can, I said quietly. And they did. To Phoenix Financial Holdings. What do you know about it? Susan snapped. I know quite a bit about Phoenix Financial, I replied, settling into an armchair. In fact, you could say I'm intimately familiar with their operations. The photographer cleared his throat awkwardly. Should I pack up? Yes, Susan said sharply. We're done here. She turned to me, her eyes blazing. What aren't you telling us, Madeline? I pulled out my phone, checking my emails with deliberate casualness. Oh, look at that. Another notice from the bank. It seems Phoenix Financial is reviewing all their recently acquired assets. They're particularly interested in examining any country club memberships associated with their new mortgage clients. The room went silent. Even Ethan and Lisa had stopped their casual chattering, sensing the tension. What have you done? My father whispered. I checked my phone discreetly, reviewing the latest acquisition reports. Phoenix Financial Holdings, my flagship company, had just closed another strategic purchase. A regional bank holding $2.3 billion in assets. The timing couldn't have been better. That bank held several of my family's loans, which would soon be under my control. The path to this moment had started 10 years ago, when I used my inheritance from my mother, a modest $50,000 she'd hidden away, to make my first investment. I'd spotted a struggling local real estate firm with excellent underlying assets. Within 6 months, I'd restructured and sold it for triple the investment. From there, I methodically built my empire through a series of carefully orchestrated moves. Each successful deal provided capital for the next, always operating through different shell companies to maintain anonymity. Wilson Capital Partners became the public face, but behind it sat a complex network of holding companies, each serving a specific purpose in my master plan. Last month's acquisition of their mortgage had been particularly satisfying. I created a specialized subsidiary, Northern Star Acquisitions, specifically to purchase distressed mortgage portfolios. When their bank decided to sell off non-performing loans, I made sure their mortgage was included in the package. The $2.1 million purchase price was barely a rounding error in my company's quarterly financials. I let the silence stretch, enjoying the growing panic on their faces. The photographer had quietly slipped out, leaving behind the tension-filled room and its shattered illusions of perfect family harmony. What I've done, I finally said, is build something while you are all busy excluding me. Something bigger than this house, bigger than your country club, bigger than all your carefully maintained appearances. Susan's hands were shaking as she reread the letter. Phoenix Financial, they own everything. The house mortgage, the club loan, my store's business loan. And the car loans, I added helpfully. Don't forget those luxury vehicles sitting in the driveway. Madeline, my father's voice had lost its usual authority. Explain yourself. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress, which cost more than their entire coordinated photo ensemble. It's quite simple, really. While you were all posing for perfect family photos, I was building an empire. Phoenix Financial is just one branch of it. You're lying, Susan whispered, but there was fear in her eyes. I pulled out my phone again, this time projecting my company's organizational chart onto the wall. Phoenix Financial, Wilson Capital Partners, Harrison Global Holdings, all subsidiaries of my parent company, all carefully built over the past decade while you thought I was just pushing papers at some investment firm. Lisa stood up, her perfect outfit suddenly seeming childish. But you drive a normal car. You live in a regular apartment. I own the building, I corrected her. Just like I own this house, the country club, and about half of the properties in this neighborhood. I just prefer not to flaunt it. Why? My father asked. Why go to all this trouble? Trouble? I laughed softly. It wasn't trouble. It was business. Good business. The fact that it happened to involve your assets, well, let's call that karmic justice. Susan's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You vindictive little. Careful. I cut her off. You might want to watch what you say to your landlord. Ethan, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. What are you going to do? Evict us? I sat back down, crossing my legs casually. That depends entirely on you. All of you. I'm prepared to offer very reasonable terms for your continued occupancy of this house and maintenance of your various loans and memberships. But first, we need to have a conversation about family. What do you mean? My father asked. I picked up one of the photos that had just been taken, examining it thoughtfully. 15 years, Dad. 15 years of watching you choose her children over me. 15 years of being excluded, dismissed, treated like an inconvenience in my own family. That's not true, he protested weakly. Really? I gestured around the room. Where are Mom's photos? Where are my childhood pictures? When was the last time you stood up for me when Susan decided I wasn't family enough for something? Tears were forming in his eyes. I didn't. I never meant. To hurt me? I finished for him. Maybe not, but you did. Every time you let her push me aside. Every time you chose silence over support. Every time you nodded along with her decisions to exclude me, you hurt me. I stood up again, walking to the mantel where their perfect family photos were displayed. But here's the interesting thing about being excluded. It gives you time to focus, to build, to plan. While you were all busy maintaining your perfect image, I was creating something real. So this is revenge. Susan's voice was bitter. No, I replied calmly. This is business. Good, solid business. Your assets were undervalued and poorly managed. I simply did what any smart investor would do. I acquired them. I pulled out another document from my bag. These are the new terms for your mortgage and various loans. You'll find them quite reasonable if you meet certain conditions. What conditions? My father asked. First, Susan's boutique will begin carrying a clothing line that supports domestic violence shelters. Second, your country club membership will be contingent on your active participation in the club's new community outreach program. And third, I pause, letting the moment stretch, you'll start treating me like family, real family. Lisa scoffed. Or what? You'll throw us out? No, I smiled. I'll simply let the market decide what happens. Your mortgage terms will reflect current rates. The country club dues will no longer be discounted. Susan's business loan will be subject to standard commercial terms. Everything will be perfectly legal, perfectly businesslike, just like our relationship has been. The room was silent as they absorbed my words. Susan's perfect facade had crumbled, revealing the insecurity beneath. My father looked older suddenly, weighed down by 15 years of wrong choices. You don't have to do this, he said softly. No, I don't. But you didn't have to exclude me from your life either. We all make choices, Dad. I've just made better ones than you. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing, next year's holiday photos. I expect to be in them. Not because you're afraid of me, but because you finally understand what family really means. As I drove away in my sensible car, my phone started buzzing with messages. Susan's carefully worded apology. My father's tearful voicemail. Even Ethan and Lisa's awkward attempts at reconciliation. I ignored them all. They'd have plenty of time to prove whether they really meant it. After all, I owned their mortgages, their loans, their precious social status. But more importantly, I owned my own success, something they could never take away. The next morning, sitting in my real office, the penthouse suite of the city's most prestigious building, I reviewed their loan documents one more time. The terms were fair, even generous. But the message was clear. I wasn't the powerless stepdaughter anymore. A new email popped up from Susan. About the holiday cards. Would you like to retake the family photos this weekend? I smiled, thinking about how quickly priorities can change when the power dynamic shifts. Sunday works, I replied. And Susan, I'll be wearing blue. I suggest everyone else does too. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about punishment. It's about making people realize what they've lost by underestimating you. In my case, they'd lost not just their financial independence, but the chance to have a real relationship with someone who could have been family all along. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to build something new. Something real. Something that didn't need perfect photos or coordinated outfits to prove its worth. After all, I hadn't built my empire to destroy them. I built it to show them that the daughter they pushed aside had become more powerful than they could have imagined. And next year's holiday card, it would show a very different family portrait, one where every member had earned their place through respect, not just blood or marriage. Because sometimes the family you fight to be part of is the family you end up leading. I pulled out my tablet, displaying a comprehensive financial overview. Let me break this down for you. Phoenix Financial currently holds $3.2 billion in assets under management. Your mortgage represents approximately 0.07% of our portfolio. The country club acquisition was part of our leisure property division's expansion strategy. We now own 15 similar facilities across 3 states. Susan's boutique loan, a relatively modest $300,000, had been acquired through our small business lending subsidiary. The interest rate would normally adjust to market rate, currently 7.8%. but I was willing to maintain their preferential 3.2% rate, provided they met my conditions. The car loans were held by our automotive finance division, which managed a $500 million portfolio of luxury vehicle loans. Their Mercedes and BMW loans, totaling $180,000, were small pieces of a much larger puzzle. The next morning, in my corner office overlooking the city, I reviewed the final paperwork. The new terms were clear. Their mortgage would maintain its current 3.5% rate instead of adjusting to market rate of 6.8%. The country club membership fees would stay at $5,000 annually rather than the new standard rate of $15,000. Susan's boutique loan would remain fixed at prime plus 1%, saving her approximately $2,000 monthly in interest.